Well, how nice to have you here. I'm going to attempt something that I've really have rarely done before. I'm going to try to have a shorter sermon than what I prepared. I have it all here, but since we've had a later start, I'll try to pray that the words that I will choose will be most effective, as opposed to all the other ones that I picked. I'll pick the most effective ones. Are you ready? Here it comes, the most effective ones. Let me ask you a question. Give it a serious thought, consideration before you answer it. If we had to forego the celebration, I got this question from Dr. John Hoffman Jr., who was the pastor for many years at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in California, Newport Beach. The question is this: if you had to forego the celebration of Christmas or Good Friday or Easter or Pentecost, which one would seem the least crucial? If you had to forego one of these, no Christmas, no Good Friday, no Easter, or no Pentecost, which would seem the least crucial? Well, most of us, he says, himself included, would have a tough time picturing a year with no Christmas, no Holy Thursday, no Good Friday, or no Easter. For many Christians, because of the congregational and cultural emphasis of the first three, most people would say, well, probably I had to choose. I choose Pentecost. But he says, absolutely not. The bottom line of what he says is that without Pentecost, the other three would not be celebrated at all. Now, I'm not going to get into the other parts that I had here, which have to do with how the Spirit impels the incarnation, Mary saying yes, God sending the Son being imbued with the Spirit, able to give his life, and so on and so forth. The Spirit raising Christ from the dead at Easter, none of that would happen without the Spirit. But because God is three in one, we can't separate the Spirit from God. But I'd like to say this: the important thing about Pentecost is that the Spirit was sent to who? God already had it. It was sent to us, to the apostles, to the disciples. And without the Spirit, there would be no church. Without the church, what would that mean? Well, what it would mean is, I don't mean the institutional church, I mean the church is the gathering of the people of God who believe, who are on fire with the Spirit, and whose lives then are changed. God could have done all of this. Create the earth, send his Son, have his Son teach and love and suffer and heal and die and then be raised again. And if the Spirit didn't live in us, what difference would it make? God would have acted, and then that would have been it. No action on our part. No reaction to the great gift that God has given to you and to me in all that he has done. Look at it this way. God made the world in all its beauty, all its perfection, all its wonder and grace, all its infinite, symmetry and purpose and unity and clarity and goodness and mystery and wonder. And what have we done to it? I don't mean just you or me. I mean human beings collectively over, the millennia, as we have decided that this was given to us not as stewardship, but as something to plunder. Right? That's what happens when there's no Spirit. That's what happens when people don't live, put it this way, according to the Spirit. T.S. Eliot had this to say with regard to his consternation of, what happens when people simply live for themselves. He says this, in his poem, Choruses from the Rock, T.S. Eliot berates society for losing their faith in God. And while some people profess to believe in God, the only way you really do show your belief in God is by the way you act. Remember, Jesus said, anybody who says they love God who they can't see but hates their neighbor who they do see is a liar. And so if we profess to have a faith in God but do nothing with it, then as St. Paul says, our faith is empty. Our faith is as lifeless as a body without breath. And so Eliot berates society for losing their faith in God. And he says this is exactly the movement that will harm us all in the long run. And he says this in his wonderful poem, Choruses from the Rock. He says, "The eagle soars in the summit of heaven. The hunter with his dogs pursues his circuit. Oh, perpetual revolution of configured stars, perpetual recurrence of determined seasons, a world of spring and autumn, birth and dying. The endless cycle of idea and action, endless invention, endless experiment, brings knowledge of motion, but not of stillness, knowledge of speech, but not of silence, knowledge of words, but ignorance of the word. All our knowledge brings us nearer to our ignorance, and all our ignorance brings us nearer to death. But nearness to death, no nearer to God. Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge that we have lost in information? You remember the basic purpose, this came from Augustine, but it was in the Baltimore Catechism. We learned it as children, but it still is effective. You know, who made us? God made us. Who's God? God, the supreme being of heaven and earth. Why did God make us? God made us to know him, to love him, to serve him, and to be happy with him whatever in the life of the world to come. So if we do not know God and put God into practice in our lives, where is the knowledge that we have lost in information? The cycles of heaven in 20 centuries bring us further from God and nearer to the dust. But then he says this, the good man is the builder, if he build or she build what is good. And then he says, take heart. I will show you things that are now being done and some of the things that were long ago done, that you might take heart. Make perfect your will. Let me show you the work of the humble. In other words, people that don't believe that they're the whole reason and purpose for their existence. He says, in the vacant places we will build with new bricks. There are hands and machine and clay for a new brick, and lime for new mortar. Where the bricks are fallen, we will build with new stone. Where the beams are rotten, we will build with new timbers. Where the word is unspoken, we will build with new speech. There is work together, a church for all, and a job for each. Every woman and man to their work. That's what Pentecost is for. That's why the gift of the Spirit is so important. It's called us. Like it calls God to create, it calls us to work, to create, and to build a new heavens and a new earth. I don't know about the new heaven, but we certainly could use a new earth. And we could certainly use a better society than the one we have right now. And so what's the most important feast of all that we have? It's Pentecost. Because otherwise, without it, God could have acted and nothing else would have happened. Get to work.